Wonderful. Officially, welcome everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, if we could put folks on mute as they're coming in, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm Karen Cow. I'm the CEO of 10 Strands. 10 Strands is a California-based nonprofit focused on advancing student environmental literacy. And this project that we're about to talk about today is one of the projects that we're working on in partnership with San Mateo County Office of Ed. San Mateo County Office of Ed is a longtime partner of 10 Strands, I'm very pleased to say. As you're coming in, if you could introduce yourself in the chat by including your name and your organization and your role. I'll let you start to do that as we're speaking. And just as we get kicked off, I'd like to take a few minutes and introduce you to Nancy McGee, the superintendent of San Mateo County Office of Ed, just so she can introduce herself and say a little bit about this project from their perspective. So Nancy, if you could come on, that'd be wonderful.
Great, thank you, Karen, and welcome everybody. Again, just like the last session we had, I'm so impressed with the large number of people with interest here in this project. It's really exciting. So my role is I'm the enthusiastic county superintendent of schools being led by two amazing individuals, and 10 Strands is such an incredible organization, but Karen Cow is just an amazing visionary, and our coordinator of environmental literacy and sustainability, Andra Ugoyan, is like a national hero at this point, I think. So she certainly is in my book. So I can't take credit for anything we're doing in San Mateo County. That all goes to Andra and Karen for their vision and leadership. What I am is on the bus. I'm on the bus with all feet and hands inside and ready to go on the ride. So if you read the newspaper on any given day and you work with young people in your work, you know that their future is dependent on what we do today. So I'm really, really excited that so many of you are lending your talent and expertise and experience to this amazing project that will impact every student in California immediately. But because the resources we'll be creating will be open source, this is actually going to impact the world. I don't know how much bigger and more important it gets than that. This is a project for the world, for the benefit of the world. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of the work. So Karen, I'll hand it back to you to get into the really important information.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for that lovely introduction. And I would say you're visionary too. I mean, the world is pretty big, so thank you for setting that bar. All right, Celeste, next slide, please. So just a little bit about the team that's working on the project so far. Obviously, some of you will also become part of that team. But on the 10 Strand side, it's small right now. It will we'll add some capacity as we move along. But right now, I'm co-leading this work with my colleague Amy Frame, who's on the call and just gave you all a little wave. And we are in the process of hiring a director of curriculum. I'm happy to say that we have some really strong candidates, and we'll be making a decision on that fairly soon. And then we have a consultant friend that we've worked with for a very long time, Mark St. John, who is also working with us on the core team. Mark's on the call too. And then we just are beginning to build a steering committee. These are the committed members so far on this slide. I won't read their names. I'll let you read their names, but we're very happy that everybody on this team has agreed to work with us. And we had our first meeting of the steering committee just on Monday. And the steering committee will add names to it as we go forward. We didn't want to make all of the decisions. We wanted it to come from within the steering committee. So that's the team right now. Okay, next slide, please. So our agenda for today, a little bit different to the last time. I did a lot more context setting the last time, but that's recorded in the first presentation, and I tried to get it to all of you before the meeting. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, it's there for you to look at. So just introductions, which is what we're doing now. And then we will use the Jamboard again that we used a lot at the last meeting. And Amy has added some pages to that Jamboard. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute, to help us organize the questions. The last time it was, everybody learned how to use the Jamboard very quickly, and we had loads of questions and we were able to sort through most of them, but we're going to take a slightly more structured approach in this meeting. And then at the last meeting, we did a Q&A, and we captured that Q&A in the recording, and there were more questions. And so we took some time this week to create an FAQ, which we finished last night, which we will send the link. We're going to send you the link to that in a minute here, if Amy hasn't already done so. And with that FAQ and with the new Jamboard, we can go deeper into some questions maybe people had the last time, and that we can surface new questions to explore together. Okay, and then we'll go to Q&A. All right. So first with the Jamboard, Amy, did you send that to everybody already? So I just want to make sure if everybody can get into that Jamboard, give you a chance to link to that. You should be able to get into it because we're definitely going to use it. And then Celeste, if you could move to the next slide.
No matter who you are or where you are,
okay,
you can achieve your career goals at Purdue University Global.
Okay, if you could go on mute, we'll try and keep putting people on mute, but if you could manage it yourself, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so on the Jamboard, we've added these extra pages. So as you're thinking about questions you want to explore, think of them in these categories. So questions relating to the LOI and the selection process, questions, that's one page. Questions related to curriculum resources and publication, that's a second page. Professional learning and implementation, logistics and schedule, and then other questions. And then at the last meeting, some folks said to us, you know, we think we could do these parts of the project, but we would like to team up with people who have this expertise. And so we will do a little bit of that ourselves, but we also thought we could integrate it into the Jamboard as well. So there's a page that focuses on matchmaking. So what and who are you looking for on one side, and what do you have to offer a team on the other side? Okay. We just wanted to offer that as a way of facilitating you meeting each other. All right, next slide, please. So at the last meeting, we shared some of these resources, and we've added two more to the that I want to tell you about in a second. But if Amy could put in all of these URLs into the chat, that would be great. So the first one is the main 10 Strands webpage. So everything that we've written about the project so far and everything we've said about the project so far that we've recorded is on this page. So these links that follow are just subs of that page. So then we've got the LOI that I think you've all looked at by now, the project synopsis similarly. We are still actively recruiting for the director of curriculum, so just making you aware of that still. So that's the URL for that. And then the two new things that we've added, the recording of the 316 webinar, which I shared with everybody, hopefully, and then the FAQs. So as we go forward in this conversation this afternoon, the most important document for you to look at in this set is this FAQ. Okay, so I'll wait till that gets posted, or Amy can tell me when it's done. And I just want to make sure that you can link on it, because between the Jamboard and that FAQ document, that will sort of help inform the rest of the discussion. Amy, tell me when that's shared, the FAQ one.
Yeah, it's shared.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you, Tom. All links accessible to Tom, so that means accessible to everybody. Okay, next slide, please. So just to anchor us again, I've shared this slide before, but this is how we're thinking of organizing the work. And the conversation today is focused on contributions from people who think they could make a contribution to this blue box on the right-hand side, the developer consortium. Okay, and then explaining the linkage between that and the other parts. So 10 Strands is acting, is shepherding, stewarding this project on San Mateo's behalf. And so we occupy this at the center place. And so on the one hand, we'll be reaching out to and working with developers. And on the other hand, on the left-hand side, we will be building an advisory board, which is different to the steering committee, but the advisory board will have people on it like the superintendent that we just spoke with, also somebody from the Department of Ed, somebody from the State Board of Ed. So just like overall higher level oversight. And then there's a steering committee. I introduced you to some members of the steering committee, and they really add to 10 Strands capacity. Based on their subject matter expertise and particular view, they add to our capacity. And so they will help set vision, direction, and ground truth our ideas by giving us feedback from the field. Okay. And then obviously there's a funding component to this, and the money came from the state of California. We are hoping to raise more money that could come possibly from the state. We don't know yet. We haven't started that particular ask, but also from philanthropy, because 10 Strands mostly, if not exclusively, has been funded by philanthropy since we started about 10 years ago. And we think this is a project that could be interesting to that type of funder. So we very much see this as a starting point. Internally, we've talked about this being the curriculum unit project, but we very quickly changed that to be the climate change and environmental justice program, because we see these curriculum units as just the starting point for broader work that we would like to take on over time, in partnership with San Mateo and in partnership with some of you, certainly. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm not going to answer all of these questions. I just wanted to share with you that in that link that Amy sent you, there were 29 questions that we pulled from both the last presentation and also the Jamboard. And we took the time to provide a written answer to each of these questions. And so there are 4 pages that follow. I'll tell Celeste in a second to advance them. But just as you're thinking about the questions you have today, some of them have already been answered, I'm sure, right? So this is the first set of questions that came up. I'm just going to give you a little while to read through these. So just so you can tune into the kinds of questions that were asked the last time. I'll go quiet for a minute. Okay, Celeste, if you could advance the slide. This is just the next set of questions you asked and we answered. Just give you a minute with these. The next slide, Celeste. And finally, the next slide. All right, Celeste, if you could advance the slide. Okay, so that's basically me done talking in the sense of not responding to things that you're curious about. But you have now access to that FAQ document. You saw the range of questions that were asked in the first webinar. We had 29 questions there that we consolidated. And two things I thought would be useful to explore in this session is if there's anything within that first set that people would like to explore further, we can definitely do that. And then obviously take new questions based on what you're curious about now as a result of reading the materials, having conversations with people, and as you start to organize to hopefully submit a letter of interest. So Amy, last time, this worked quite well, but Amy last time looked at the Jamboard as people were compiling questions, and we just went live with me, answering questions as they came up. Mark, who's also on the 10 Strands team, is available today. He might have something to say about some of the ways in which we want to approach the work. And then Amy might be busy with the Jamboard, but if there's anything that she wants to contribute to, she of course she can as well. So Amy, do we have anything on the Jamboard yet?
Yeah, we do. I think a lot of them are really about the LOI of the selection process, which makes sense in this stage. So the first one, easy one, who and what are you looking for?
The best and the brightest. Who and what are we looking for? I think this gets to a little bit why we've chosen to do an LOI process rather than an RFP process, and therefore to the first question in the FAQ. We were very deliberate about not taking some kind of black box approach to soliciting who we might work with, because we wanted to try to lower the barrier of entry to this work, to see if we could introduce interesting people to interesting people through this process. And so it was one of the reasons why we decided to do these webinars, so you can all see each other and you can perhaps meet and think about how you might work together. So what we're looking for are people who are passionate about this topic and who have these topics, climate change and environmental justice. I kind of think of them as one thing, but topics, issues, and also deeply resonate with California as a place and understand California as a place with respect to these issues, and who know how to design product from the margins, know how to design product that is culturally relevant, deeply culturally relevant and meaningful to the student population of California, and people who have the expertise to take on a project of this size, that we're eager to do something unique and innovative, and at the same time, of course, accessible, and where we hope to take this work to scale so that all California teachers and all California students can benefit from this contribution that we will collectively make.
Great. I have a couple of questions here about the team composition again. So one of them is, and I reposted the LOI and the project synopsis in the chat box because some of these questions are at least initially answered there.
Mhm.
But I want to make sure that you guys also get your questions answered since you have spent this time with us today. So how many people equal a team/developer consortium? And there's a couple more that are closely related, Karen. If we had a content expert with PBL or interdisciplinary experience, could we contribute them across several grade levels? And are we able to send just one person who could join a grade level team?
And the answer to all of those is yes, possibly. You know, I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a teacher today, an individual teacher who I've known a long time, who's been doing amazingly interesting work in her place. And she was wondering about contributing to this and in what way. And so we talked about, somebody who has a sort of capacity of one, but who's been actually fundamentally doing the type of work that we want to generate, versus a group that has a capacity of many who have been working on curriculum development for decades, and is there a place for both? And I think constructed carefully through collaborative conversations, I think there's a place for both. I think there's possibly a place for both. Yeah.
Karen, if I might jump in,
Yeah.
one of the roles I play on the project is I say things, and that allows Amy and Karen to correct them. And so I'll say something about all of this. I think we're looking to, in the letter of interest, it's really a letter of introduction. We would love to have people introduce themselves and tell us what would you like to contribute? What unique things could you bring to this? In a way, we're making a stew, and we'd like lots of rich ingredients. And some people may be major contributors, some may be minor, but at the very least, we would love to hear what is it you would like to contribute and you could bring to it. You may have unique approach or things you've done in the past or values that you bring. And I think the challenge will be for us at 10 Strands to assemble a team, put together a stew that's rich and comes together and makes sense. And it's more fun for us to have an array of ideas proposed, an array of people, and then we will look how to assemble them so that we can meet the vision that we are trying to lay out in the synopsis. So I guess I would encourage people to go ahead and just write us a letter of interest and a letter of introduction saying, gosh, I don't know what you're going to end up with, but here's what we would like to do, because ultimately we'll get a product that assembles what you want to do and our vision. And so it'll be a collaborative project in the end. So in that sense, it's not an RFP. It's not like a funding agency says this is exactly what we want. Rather, we want to hear what you have to offer given the vision that we've laid out.
That's right.
Exactly. Yep. Oh,
Look at that. We agreed with you, Mark.
First time.
That's because I'm from the country of hearty stews.
I liked your analogy. I think there's a few other questions like that, but I do think you kind of answered them. So someone is asking, will organizations that submit a joint LOI as part of a developer consortium only be considered as a member of the developer consortium, or will they also be considered and potentially selected individually, even if the entire developer consortium is not selected? So that's one. And a related one, is, would it be okay or helpful to submit a response from an individual partner who's also involved in a developer consortium?
Depends on what way the individual that was part of that first thing you said parses their experience and how they articulate the piece of it that they're going to contribute. Because it's, I mean, if you're coming in as a unit with a, you know, comprehensive approach, we might not be able to parse the bits, right, sufficiently. So if something like that needs to be underscored, so we see it, so we notice it, I would recommend that. Yeah.
For the LOI phase, can we submit our qualifications for just 1 to 2 of the 4 scopes for the developer consortium and look for you to help us find team members for the next phase, or do we need to do the teaming ourselves now?
Well, both. The more you can do yourself, the easier our lives will be. But the more matchmaking you, I mean, I've talked to some people who are saying, we're into this piece of it and we're going to team with this group to do that piece of it. Does that make sense? And I'm like, yes, that makes sense. But sometimes, you know, maybe you're not networked in that way. And that doesn't mean that you don't have something valuable to contribute. And so I think the answer to that is both. Yeah.
Can organizations outside the US apply?
I think that it's important to us and it's important to San Mateo and it's important to the Department of Ed that what's understood is this California context that we are working in. And so if that comes through in the letter of interest, then anybody can apply. But what's exciting to all of us who've been working in environmental ed, environment-based education, environmental literacy, is this connection to place, is this place-based component. And, you know, I live between 2 countries, and you know, you have to be in a place to really feel it, you know. So that has to come through in the LOI that gets submitted. But in terms of, you know, technical expertise, that kind of thing, subject matter expertise, that can come from anywhere. But this is a place-based opportunity. Yeah.
Can we submit additional documents beyond the 5 pages in case you want to see samples of work, unit plans, rubrics, etc.?
Yeah, I think we offered that in the LOI just so that to demonstrate. So yes, links to other things would be fine, but we are trying to keep it. We want to try and, you know, we said 5 pages because we wanted it to be reasonable for everybody, reasonable for you to write it and reasonable for us to read it in the period of time that we've got. So, but yeah, I mean, we do that all the time when we're submitting to foundations. We showcase particularly exciting things that demonstrate the movement of the work. So, and our expertise in the work. So yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
And certainly in the next round, there'll be an opportunity for that as well.
For sure.
Do you have a set amount of funding to pay participants or a scope of work, hours, days, etc.? When we're trying to put forward folks in our organization, what type of compensation can we say they will receive, ballpark figure?
That really would be up to, so we have, for the development of each piece associated with each grade, we've set the rate at $215,000, so $215,000 times 13. And how if you have, let's say you have all of that to play with, how you organize your budget internally to accomplish the work would be up to you. I mean, we would be in receipt of the budget so that we could get into contract with you. If we end up working with 3 partners or 5 partners or more, and we look at the different component parts that people are going to contribute, we're going to have to take that 215,000 and parse it a bit. But within the piece of work that the person or group is going to take on, you'll be responsible for creating your budget and setting your rate for the expertise that you will work with.
I would just add that to the extent that the people involved in this work will form a vibrant and cohesive network to collaborate on this project, that a lot of the compensation can also come in the form of the professional learning and experiences that we have building the project together as well, that will be taken care of from a separate part of the budget than your specific development.
That's right. That's right. There are definitely other parts of the budget, and some of those parts of the budget we might even release another LOI for. This conversation today is only about that blue box on that slide I showed you early on in the hour, right? But within the all of those categories of things that's under the 10 Strands name in the middle, we're not going to do all of that work. That some of that work will also be done through partnership, and we will likely issue another LOI for those parts of the work.
Great. The project synopsis states that there will be online structures for collaboration among teachers, students, and with researchers and community-based partners. Does that mean we will be responsible for creating an online communication network for these participants?
No, that'll be in that middle block that I just mentioned. We will be responsible for creating that, but we might do it through partnership, right? We might do it through providers that already have platforms or things that we might want, something off the shelf that we might customize for this very purpose. No, that'll all happen in a separate part of the project.
If a consortium member is a nonprofit looking to track the reach of their work on this project, will these numbers be accessible in the future through continued partnership?
Yes, definitely, definitely. This isn't owned by anybody in a sense, you know. We've deliberately chosen to do it as an open education resource asset. The platform that will be built or borrowed will be open. This is a state project, and the design of it from the very beginning is to be transparent and inclusive, and to learn from what we produce and how it's used and how derivatives are created and how things are passed along. So yeah, everything. I mean, that's definitely part of the design intent, to keep everything open.
All right, here's a good one for you, Karen. Okay, thinking about the interdisciplinary structure,
Right.
how might we center the history of the environmental movement as a space of inquiry? Knowing that many of them were eugenicists, the abstractive, disintegrative, hierarchical worldview that drove them is at the core of so many issues we face, not the least of which is our present climate crisis. Using this history as an analytical lens could help bolster systems thinking, but also expand opportunities for vertical alignment and cohesion across other curricular initiatives, such as civics and ethnic studies.
That sounds like a question you would have written, Amy.
I swear it wasn't me.
You know, I think this, I don't think this worked for us because of its structure. Needs to be standards based. And so when we articulate certain contexts, or we explore certain phenomena, then however we center ourselves, whether it's those types of topics or otherwise, as long as there's an alignment back to the standards and the grade level that we're working with. As long as that's in place, I think we can explore together many interesting perspectives.
And I think there's a lot of movement around this in social studies, civics, and the ethnic studies world. And it would be amazing. There's no, we don't have borders on the curriculum resources like that. We want them to expand into all of those areas. Okay, I see one that says question 7 of the LOI is a bit complex. Can you unpack it a bit?
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm wondering if I'm putting it in the chat here, and someone can correct me if this is not what you mean, but it's the one that asks how your design approach would also at the same time be appropriate to and interesting to all districts, schools, teachers, and students in California.
Okay, let me just have a quick look. Celeste, for some reason, you're no longer showing your slides.
Oh yeah, weird, it closed out.
Yeah. All right. And actually, Celeste, you don't need to show your slides anymore. We'll just, it's better for me even to see everybody's faces. So let me move the chat so I can see it.
Oh, sorry, the person, thank you, Elaine, clarified which one she meant.
I see, okay.
So Karen, I'm going to jump in again. It's Mark. I just wanted to go back to the previous question. And I think it's fair to say in our conversations that we've sort of emphasized the whole centrality of an inquiry stance or an inquiry approach. Inquiry meaning a lot of things, but it means a questioning into approach. So one could question into the science, the engineering, the economics, or the history of issues or events. And if there's an authentic inquiry stance, then I think that inquiry can happen in multiple disciplines and into multiple topics, all of which would help students and teachers come to a kind of firsthand understanding and learning about their environment, enhance their environmental literacy, and sharpen their sense of environmental justice and injustices.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm just looking at Eileen's, so within the LOI, we're saying that types of professional learning, content knowledge, pedagogy, community partnerships, publishing, or project management support that would best enable your team to meaningfully and inclusively engage in this project. So yeah, our thinking behind that was, if these are some of the possible parts of the whole, parsed, in what way might you contribute to some of these parts or all of these parts based on the expertise that you bring? That's really all we meant by it, okay? Is that helpful? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Great. So what role, oh, sorry, was someone speaking?
No, I was, but I wasn't saying anything, so go ahead.
Okay. What role or not do you see project-based or service learning in the community playing a role in and supporting or amplifying or applying learning done in the classroom? For example, students working on a community garden or with local municipalities to increase community climate resilience. Do you see opportunities for organizations with expertise of this type working with the curriculum team?
Yes, and that's I'm very excited by that question. I mean, overall, when we were first starting to talk about this project and we were looking at the California frameworks specifically in science, history, social science, health, arts, and math, because those are the frameworks where we had worked with a consultant to add California's environmental principles and concepts to those frameworks. And overall, when you look at all of those frameworks together, the message flowing out of them is in California, this desire for students to engage in hands-on inquiry, leading to action in their communities. That's like that's the headline when you look at all of those frameworks together. And so for us, as we've talked about this, we absolutely would like to see that the end result is students engaged in, well, inquiry, obviously, but leading to action in their communities. So yes, definitely. And in all of the work that we've done, not just at 10 Strands, but within our community over this last decade or so, the richest things happen when the magic happens, really, when we pair community-based organizations with the type of expertise we're talking about with teachers so that they can do shoulder work together. And the extent to which this program that we'd work on together, some of us will work on together, can facilitate that and underscore that, the better. Yeah. What else, Amy?
Someone was just wondering about after school programs too.
Yeah, somebody asked me about that this morning in an email, and we're not necessarily designing for extended learning, but I do think if we design these well and based on some of those principles we were just talking about, I think they could be usefully used in well, not just after school, but sort of before school too, in those expanded learning settings. Yeah, especially because of the supplemental nature of them, the coherence around an experience over, let's say, a 3-week period. I think they would do quite well in those settings. Yeah.
Great. Is there an effort to get more of the vast Latina community involved in submitting LOIs? Related, are there a proportional level of submissions from LAUSD, 1/10 of the student body of the state?
LAUSD they're doing amazing work themselves in this area. They just passed a very progressive climate resolution, and part of that resolution is to create curricular resources focused on climate change. And so they haven't started yet, but yeah, LAUSD has got more children in it than the country I come from. So it's its own country, and they are doing amazing work with respect to this and just growing in influence all of the time. So I see them more as a partner in this work. But in terms of the first part of the question, intentional recruitment of the Latinx community to this work, we probably have not done a great job of that in terms of fronting that as a choice, but we've done our very best to proliferate this opportunity through the networks that we do have access to and the relationships that we do have with the Latinx community. But probably we could have done better. There. Yeah.
And we'll take help too on that if you know people that we should be reaching out to or meeting with or sharing with.
Right.
And I know that we have Dan at least from LAUSD on here right now. So I don't know if you wanted to add any updates in the chat or anything. And maybe some of you are also from LAUSD there too. But it's great progress. A few more questions are popping up. Would integration, and I think I've gotten all the ones that are questions, and if that's not the case, please do let me know. Would integration of UNESCO's sustainable development goals within units and lessons be considered appropriate? For some in the ed community, the SDGs have a political association as they're promoted by UNESCO.
Well, Emily Schell on our steering committee, who is the executive director of the California Global Education Project. Emily has done a nice job for me of articulating the connection between those SDG goals and California's EP&Cs. And I think where that marriage sort of naturally persists, I think to that extent, we could definitely include thinking about the SDGs in this work. But for us, we're focused on California framework, California standards, and California's environmental principles and concepts as the sort of primary connective tissue. Okay.
That might possibly be it, Karen. And I guess if there's anyone that for any reason is unable to type in a question and you'd rather ask it, I think that'd be a great time to do that now, maybe by raising your hand, or if you need to, just unmuting yourself.
Yeah, and I haven't been turning my attention to the chat, but I am now just looking at the chat. And Lucy, yes, thank you, Lucy, for all of the amazing work that you've done in LAUSD. And thanks for being on the call. And Milton too, I really appreciate your comment as well there. Multiple comments, thank you. All right. Yeah, if you don't want to continue to use the Jamboard and you want to use chat, or you just want to come off mute, go ahead. No problem with that. I am now looking at chat.
I think there was just one question there, but we did capture it.
Mm-hmm. Hollis, thank you for that comment that you've just made. Agreed. And Celeste, thank you for your comment about Jose and his dissemination into the Latinx community. And Jose is on our steering committee as well. Anybody got a question? Well, I'll tell you what happened last time. What happened last time is we officially ended the meeting and I stayed on, and we had a rich discussion. And so that informed the FAQ, so that we all continue to learn together. And I would be similarly happy to officially end the meeting and stay on for a bit if some people wanted to chat. All right.
We have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Amy.
One from Alice and then one from Devin. Can you expand on our expectations on EJ, Asian American history, for example?
I don't know that I know how to address that specific link. I don't know that I don't think I have that expertise, Alice, to comment on that right now. But that rather the people we end up working with will have that expertise. Yeah.
And that, yes, important.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And then what was the other question from Devin?
Go ahead, Devin.
Yes, thank you so much. I kind of have a two-part question. One of the questions is, and my apologies if this has been already answered a few times, is it more applicable for a team to propose a like a unit concept that can span 3 grade levels, like the 3-5 or the K2 or the 6-8, or is it more applicable to do a single grade level? And I apologize for the ignorance of my question if it's already been answered.
Not ignorant, of course. I think probably, I mean, either is the answer, but I think practically and possibly more usefully the former. So thinking about a grade band, thinking about an experience across a grade band.
Got it. Grade band. Okay, so like the 6-8, the 3-5. Got it. Exactly right.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. And then my second question, there was a program that myself and another colleague did called STEM for Real,
Yes.
which is an equity based, and we've done it with the CCCOE. We are permitted to bring in our knowledge and skills we gained from STEM for Real and connecting with that organization as like a partner organization. Is that correct?
That's right. They're great. Lena Bashke's work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think she's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with them too. We worked with them on the climate summit for the California Association of Science Educators.
Oh, perfect.
So, absolutely. I'm looking at, were you done, Devin, or no?
I was just going to say what
Right.
had popped up on my screen were the recording questions. And I was wondering, I would like the beginning of this meeting because I missed that part. So if I can get the recording too, please.
I'll send it to everybody. Yeah, once you save it down, I'll send it to everybody. Mary Walls, Youth Voice. I'm looking at some of these questions about Youth Voice. So Mary and somebody else said a +1. So on the steering committee, we have already 2 students. We have a high school junior and a high school senior. So definitely, and we're planning, it's 2 young women, and so we need to add some diversity. But we're definitely planning in terms of who's advising us and our capacity to have youth voice expressed. And then we've been in some conversations with some youth groups who would like to talk about ways in which they might get involved by sharing youth expertise and, you know, youth views of how we might take an approach. And so those conversations are taking place right now. There's nothing concrete yet on the relationship side, but we've got made some concrete steps on the steering committee. Okay. Cami, I see Cami's hand up. Yeah.
Hi, Cami.
Hi, Amy. What I'm taking away from this is that you're going to receive all these LOIs and you're going to review them, and you might, it would be almost like a buffet of capacities and skills and expertise. And then you might look at an LOI where someone has a strength, and that LOI might identify this is where we need support. And you're going to do some mixing and matching to assemble these teams. And then there's going to be a summertime meeting. At that summertime meeting, would you expect all of the teams to attend, or representatives from teams? And then I assume that group is going to come up with some shared ideas about scope and sequence and formatting, and then the work will begin.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's a very, very nice summary. We picked, I'm just jumping back to the chat. We picked the 2 students. So one of the students is from San Mateo, and obviously San Mateo is a partner, and she's a young climate activist down there. And another of the students is from San Diego, and she was involved with some work that was done last year related to Climate Champions program in the San Diego area. And so they both presented in those contexts, and they've done some really interesting sort of student level activism within their communities, and they are already leading groups within their communities. So that's how we were introduced to them. Yeah. And there are already a number of other students that have been introduced to us, and we are interested in sort of geographic mix. So we've got San Mateo, we've got San Diego, but we are looking for other geographies too. Eric, I can see your hand up, Eric.
Thanks so much, Karen, and thanks for, I really appreciate this follow-up and the evolution from the last one. Just the design of that is great. And this is related to the last verbal question that was just asked about matchmaking and collaboration. You know, that I really appreciate the idea of creating this robust and hearty stew. How, and also the idea of preceding that, the idea that you all will be sort of making those connections and helping to do that in the LOI process. Preceding that, I know I've talked with a couple of my colleagues that are on the call about ideas and you know, just, will there be any other kind of support around that before the LOI is due in April in terms of, in early April in terms of that matchmaking and connecting folks beforehand, so we can start to do some of that sorting even before you all have that in front of you.
Between now and April 8th, so April 8th is like, is it next Friday already? It's next Friday already.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing is I've said to everybody, like I talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. So I've been having a few conversations with people, like after the last webinar and before this one, where I've had 30-minute conversations, 40-minute conversations with people who are curious about, do I know if there's anybody who this, that, or the other, because that's a gap for us. And so that's how we've been providing that support so far. And probably that's how we'll continue to do it between now and now and April.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, that helps a lot.
Thanks.
I think we probably should call it, Kemi. I think all the questions have been answered, at least in the chat. And there is, in our current Jamboard right now, there is a matchmaking board, and this is yours to play with and add boards as you need. Right now it's frame 6 on the Jamboard, but you can add as needed. Sorry, I meant to write frame 6. And then we have a very intellectual conversation going on also, which my brain cannot currently process in the middle of all this, but I will go back and read this. I'm
having the same experience with that, and I'm interested in it. Is this the exchange between Milton and Lucy? So yeah, so I'm appreciating it and at the same time trying to pay attention to the group. So I would like to we'll capture this chat, and Milton and Lucy, I'd love to check in with you. I know how to get in touch with both of you, so let's do that. All right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you both. Hard to be like the brain in 2 places at once. Are we all set, everybody? Do you think we've covered good ground? All right, so we'll stop recording. Thank you very much again for an amazingly rich hour, and I'll just hang here for a little bit and see if you've got anything that you want to ask me just individually. Okay.